All right, out on a morning walk this morning, jogging here and there too. Didn't get very much sleep, couple hours, so I'm not trying to go too hard, but I wanted to talk about calories this morning and the whole debate around calories in versus calories out and how that principle applies to each individual and their individual circumstances. Now, the rule of thumb is if you're in a calorie deficit, eating mostly healthy foods, training hard, all right, you're going to lose body fat no matter what. You will lose weight. And that is correct. There's no denying that. There's no rebuttal to that really. But there are circumstances where that rule does not apply. Let me give you an example. You guys remember that show, The Biggest Loser, that used to be on TV? You know, severely obese people would come onto the show. They would apply the CICO rule. They would put them through vigorous training for weeks and weeks and weeks. And yes, people would lose body fat. They would lose hundreds of pounds in some cases, over 100 pounds, 150 pounds, over the course of months. It worked. But what ended up happening to a lot of these people is whenever they got off the show and went back to their normal lives, their metabolisms ended up adjusting to their workload and to their calorie expenditure. And what happened was whenever they slightly increased their calories a little bit more than where they were at, almost every single participant that was on the show gained their body fat back. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And that's just one single example. Another example would be how experienced athletes, experienced weightlifters can be in a severe calorie deficit for a long period of time, right? Weeks, months, and they'll hit a plateau. And they won't be losing any more body fat, and they'll start losing muscle mass. But they're following the calories in versus calories out principle, right? They're hitting their macros, they're hitting enough protein, they're getting enough recovery, they're getting enough sleep, they're supplementing, taking their vitamins, they're doing everything that they're supposed to do, and yet they still plateau. What a lot of trainers have found, and there's a lot of testimony backing this up, Mind Pump podcast actually has a couple episodes about this exact thing. What ends up happening is these people will take a little bit of time off, a couple days, a week or whatever, right? Deload. And then they'll come back in a calorie surplus with mostly healthy foods, okay? And after a few weeks, what they find is they get massive lean muscle mass gains, and their body fat percentage either stays the same or actually drops a little bit more. Why is that? They're going in a surplus, right? So they should be bulking, right? They should be putting on body fat, right? No. It's called reverse dieting. That's the term. So you see these people, these, what do we call them? I myself am one of these people that I'm referring to, in a way, okay? I got just a simple certification. It took me a couple months to get through ISSA. What you have is a bunch of people who went through similar certification programs, and they come along and they say, oh, well, CICO applies no matter what, because that's what the book teaches them. And it's not that it's wrong, but there's nuance, there's individuality, there's variability. Each individual person's circumstances are slightly different. Each individual person's body composition is slightly different. Each person's individual genetics are different, and each individual person's training experience is different. Health conditions, disease are also factors that come into play. And what you get on social media, with these people that got a simple certification and didn't do any research beyond that is they will tout off, chime in, and just parrot the CICO rule. As long as you're in a deficit, as long as you're training and eating whole foods, no matter what, you will drop weight. Yeah, and you will for the most part, until you hit a plateau, until you're overtraining, until your body adjusts and you stop losing body fat and you start losing all the gains that you made. So see, the situation goes both ways. And really these people just defend the CICO rule till they're blue in the face because that's all they know. They don't have the experience yet. I don't even have the experience yet, but just through doing extra research, listening to trainers who've been doing this for decades, you know, watching countless videos on YouTube, following real doctors, real metabolic doctors on social media, you know, like I have learned that these simple principles, while they apply to most of the population most of the time, undeniable, they are not completely objective. I said what I said. It is what it is, man. And that is a fact. You know, you cannot just imagine being a trainer, right? And you have a client, and a couple of these people that I've, you know, gotten into debates with about this very thing claim that they're trainers and that they have a 100% success rate. I know that's BS. And what I worry for is if these people get a hold of somebody who makes progress and then hits a plateau, and all they want to say is, oh, let's cut your calories down a couple hundred more. But that person's already in a severe calorie deficit, right? They're already at 1,600. Their BMR is like 2,000, right? So they're already in a negative 400. Plus their workload from training is 600, 800 above that, right? And they're like, oh, well, you plateaued because you're not in a calorie deficit anymore. So let's just lower it even further. And they take away a couple hundred more. Now that person's at 1,400. What ends up happening is you have a stress hormone response. Cortisol levels elevate, and the person stagnates even more and burns out. And because they stagnate and burn out, they lose the confidence, they lose progress, and they give up. This is especially common in overweight people and people who are newer to fitness. And these trainers love to take the general principle, apply it no matter what, and they don't take any other factors into play. They don't follow any other training principles like reverse dieting. You know, whenever a person hits a plateau like that and you go weeks and they're not making any progress, well, now it's time to up the calories again. Keep training the exact same, up the calories, up the protein, up the carbs, and they'll start putting on lean muscle mass, and their body fat percentage will stay the same or even start dropping slightly due to the increased muscle mass, right? Because we know more muscle mass equals what? More calorie expenditure, more fat burning. There's no denying that, man. This is real stuff. You know, you guys need to go educate yourself some more. Instead of hopping on social media insulting people, claiming that they're being lazy, claiming that they're just making excuses, not trying hard enough, that they're unaccountable. That's their favorite word right there. You know, and then if you try to explain this to them, and there's no like definite like controlled study backing this up, which there are, by the way. I can't cite one right off the top of my head, but it's out there. You know, a lot of trainers are talking, a lot of trainers, experienced trainers know exactly what I'm saying. It's out there, and these people love to use, you know, dictionary words, right? Advanced vocabulary to try to make themselves seem smarter than they are. And quantifiable. Oh, show me how the variability is quantifiable in their circumstances, so much so that it matters more than CICO. You know who I'm talking about if you watch this video, Mr. Quantifiable Expert. You need to go, y'all baseline trainers, you need to go do some more research. You need to take into consideration genetics, disease, health conditions, overtraining, and reverse dieting. and how all those things get tied together depending on the individual, whether they're overweight or they're an experienced athlete.